Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time and joining us today. Today, I'm going to kind of talk about take the opportunity to discuss how to make market research easy and how GSA can enhance our industry partnerships. My name is Christy Wilbur, and I am the program manager with the Customer Stakeholder and Engagement Division with GSA. I'm also an IMARCS program work underneath the IMARCS program, but I'm located here in Region 6 in Kansas City. I'm also joined today by Stephen Rohal. He is one of our subject matter experts and a data analytics lead with GSA's Information Technology Category Group. For questions today, what we're going to do is probably wait until the end of the presentation. So in that Q&A box, like Robin said, just put in there in that Q&A. I have Sandra Clerk-Brown on the line also. She will be kind of maintaining and watching those questions for us as well as I and Stephen go through our presentation. So GSA's Market Research as a Service IMARCS program, it helps agencies understand existing markets and how their requirements fit in them. We construct market research techniques mostly through requests for information or RFIs and build data sets to maximize the agency outcomes. So our goal is to make market research super easy for all stakeholders. And in the next few slides, I'm going to kind of take you through some of this, although our normal training that we normally do monthly, we're kind of steering off of it a little bit, and we have our guest speaker, Stephen, on this time. So I'm going to go quickly over a high-level view of IMARCS and what we're doing, and then we're going to turn it over to Stephen. So today, speaking about the IMARCS program and how, as an industry partner, to successfully respond to the RFIs and to make market research more effective for our federal partners, as well as build our industry partnerships. The objectives of today's course will be to provide a quick overview of the IMARCS successes, a better understanding of why market research is conducted, and then we'll have a discussion regarding an IMARCS RFI that is currently open that focuses on artificial intelligence and machine learning products and services with our guest speaker, Stephen Rohal. And then we'll have closing remarks. I'll provide some additional resources, and then we'll be able to get into our Q&A sessions. So the IMARCS program overall has been very successful, and to date it has supported more than 350 clients over the last 3 years. It has produced $6.4 billion worth of projects. One important note is that 50% or more of the requirements that are researched through IMARCS, through the IMARCS program, actually get awarded to a GSA contractor holder. So the question kind of remains, why do we provide this type of service to our federal agencies, and why do we conduct market research? So Federal Acquisition Regulations, or the FAR Part 10, outlines the scope and procedure of how agencies should conduct market research to determine if items or services are available to meet the government's needs or could be modified to help meet those government's needs. So we kind of want to start the conversation and give our federal partners data that focuses on their specific requirements, so that we can be sure that they have all the information that they need to make informed acquisition decisions. We rely on industry partners like you to reply to these RFI surveys with timely and relevant information. So now that I've kind of given you a little bit of information on why market research is important, I'm going to be turning over the presentation to Stephen in a minute, just to discuss how to fill out one of our IMARCS RFIs. Typically, like I said, this monthly training session provides a general overview of the market research as a service program, and it offers tips and tricks on how to fill out the IMARCS RFI surveys. However, we would like to also address some feedback and questions that we receive from industry. So keeping that in mind, today's session will actually be focusing on a more specific project. We recently posted a IMRAS RFI on eBay to understand the capabilities related to artificial intelligence and machine learning products and services that may be a potential interest to the federal government. This RFI is due to close on February 5th, and it was posted to eBay, and I'll provide all the RFQ numbers that were posted in eBay in the chat at the end of the presentation. But so for today, again, we've asked Stephen to be our guest speaker to discuss how to best fill out this survey. Stephen is a data analytics lead with GSA's Information Technology Category Group, and he will be discussing this requirement and what GSA is looking for and the best way to approach responding to this RFI. So take it away, Stephen.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Christy. I'll just make one small correction. I'm actually in GSA's TTS, Technology Transformation Services, but I am a data and analytics lead there, and we are working with GSA's ITC, Information Technology Category, to help them and their acquisition professionals, excuse me, get a better handle on artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities. And that's really the goal of this RFI, right? So the people that I'm working with in my organization, we all have a background in AI and machine learning and data analysis. But what we're finding is that this field is really changing so quickly and changing so rapidly that we really want to be able to provide more guidance on what's possible, what's out there, what's available to our acquisition professionals and to our agency partners. I should make it really clear. And so a lot of what I'll say in the presentation is based upon some questions we've gotten already from various vendors who have responded to the survey. One is that there is no particular acquisition associated with this RFI. This is really just an information gathering opportunity, trying to get a better handle, as I said, on what's out there today and what's coming down the road in the future. And just to give you a little bit of sense of kind of how we got to where we are here today is, this all started with us kicking around some questions that we'd like to ask. And we said, well, what kind of products are out there? What kinds of chatbot technology things, for example, might be out there that we can use? And so we developed a series of questions with an internal team, and we circled that through other people in the government and other agencies who are AI and machine learning experts. We spoke to acquisition professionals within GSA and elsewhere. We spoke to a number of vendors. We vetted some questions, some early versions of the survey, all on paper. And from there, it blossomed into, from the handful of questions that I originally created a couple of months ago, it blossomed into 175 questions today. Don't let that scare you. You probably won't see all of those 175, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Once we kind of reached a consensus on those questions, then we worked to get them into the MRAS online tool. And again, if you've got questions in particular on that tool, you'll see some screenshots of what it looks like. Pretty standard kind of online survey tool, but we're more than happy to answer those questions as well. Sometimes getting those questions off of my paper into the system wasn't always the easiest thing to do, but we made it work. And I think we've got a survey that we're really getting some very interesting data from today. One thing that I will say as well is that this survey isn't the end of this research, right? One of the things that I'm sure you're all aware of is that this field is changing very, very rapidly. And so we're using the results from this survey to help shape how we might structure a future survey or future surveys. And again, I'll get a bit into that in just a minute as well. So I guess, Christy, if you could go to the next slide. So a couple of challenges that I'd just like to bring up first. And the number one is there's lots of different types of vendors in this space. I can't see who all is in the call today right now. I'm guessing that you represent vendors from all over the map, right? And we had originally targeted the survey at companies that we envisioned would be producing products. So tell us about your product. What does it do? How does it work? How can we buy it? How does it get installed? What are the prerequisites? And then we realized that, well, some companies have multiple products. And then we realized that, well, a lot of companies are more system providers or service providers and integrators. And some provide platforms that aren't really meant as an end product, but meant to be used to build other products. And of course, there are vendors that are more than one of these, and there are lots that are all three. And so one of our challenges in coming up with this survey was to try to collect the information from all of these different types of vendors in a kind of a fair and equitable way, right? We didn't want to leave anybody out of the picture. And that's why it kind of blossomed to the number of questions it is. But again, you're unlikely to see all of those. And I'll show more on the next slide on that. The AI, as I mentioned, the AI and ML space is rapidly evolving and changing, as I mentioned. And so, if we ask a question today about a particular type of technology, is your product involved with natural language processing? Maybe today it is, tomorrow it'll be something else. And so we need to be able to be flexible and adaptive to that as well. And finally, we don't want the survey to be a chore, right? This is, you're doing the government a favor here by helping us characterize the landscape of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the last thing we want to do is to wear people out by asking them to take a very, very long and very, very complicated survey. So that's certainly not our goal. Christy, can you move ahead? So to that end, most of the questions in the survey are limited choice, right? We provide either radio buttons if we want a single answer, or multiple select checkboxes if the multiple answers are possible. One of the things that I've done is that anytime there are multiple choices, there's always an other, and there's always a text fill-in for the other. And what I would ask you to do is, if other is appropriate for your survey, go ahead and check it, but please provide us with some details on that. In particular, I want to take your other answers and make them choices in the future, for example. So help us improve our future surveys. Tell us things that we don't know, that we haven't anticipated, and I'm sure there's plenty. So that is the one thing I will definitely ask all of you to do if other is the most appropriate choice for you. One exception to this is when we ask people to provide a description of your product or your service. We provide a text box. Tell us as much as you want to about the text, about the product that you have or the services that you provide. We also have a way that you can point us or upload white papers or websites that might provide some additional detail on your offerings. And in particular, if there are multiple products, there is an option as well to upload a spreadsheet rather than going through and trying to fill out the survey multiple times. To do that would be very frustrating because you'd end up filling out a bunch of the same questions over and over and over again. So there is an option. If you really do have a number of products, you can fill out a spreadsheet and upload that as well. Christy, move forward, please. So why won't you see all 175 questions? Or maybe you will if you are in all of these spaces. One of the things that we did, and I'll show these questions on the next page, the next couple of slides, is there is a survey flow that will take you through three main branches, right? So everyone will get some introductory information, and we'll ask some organizational questions. These questions are very typical. Who's your point of contact? What's your address? What type of business are you? Are you a small business? Are you a woman-owned business, for example? So all kinds of those sorts of organizational questions everyone gets asked. And then we ask a couple of questions that help shape the rest of the survey that you'll see. Do you sell a product? In which case you'll go to the product branch. And again, that could be one or multiple products. Are you an integrator? Do you work with other people's products or maybe combine products together in order to provide an offering, perhaps a little more of a custom offering for an agency? Or are you a platform provider? Do you provide an underlying capability that other people use to build a product, for example? And so we wanted to hit all of those. Again, people can certainly be in more than one of those categories. After answering those questions, we then go to a couple of questions about ethics. Ethics in AI and machine learning, a big topic right now. We're very interested in finding out what your policy is if you have one, and ask you to provide a pointer to that. And we also ask then if you've got any kind of industry recognition and some other closing questions. Have you won some award? Are you in Gartner's Magic Quadrant in a certain area or something of that nature? Again, everyone gets asked that series of questions. Christy, can you go to the next slide, please? So the introductory questions, as I said, basic demographic information. I will say, because we had gotten this as a question early on, and you can see here in the middle of the screen, the full list of questions is available as a PDF to download. So if you aren't sure if you've got the time right now to fill it out, if you maybe have multiple people that you would like to fill it out, you'd like to get answers ahead of time and have one person enter it, both of those are very possible. You can download the list of questions. You can take a look at it. You'll have to follow the logical flow that I kind of outlined on the previous slide to kind of make sure you answer the right questions, but it'll become clear when you go online to do it. Some of the other introductory information. So here we ask, for example, how did you hear about this RFI? Was it through eBuy? Was it through beta.sem or some other way? And there are some other questions. I didn't show all of those, but I did want to emphasize that you don't necessarily have to, you can get all the questions ahead of time. And as long as you use the same browser, the system will automatically save your responses. So you can come back and fill it out, continue to fill it out from where you left off in a second sitting. It shouldn't take any more than an hour, I'll say. Mostly the surveys that I've seen have been between, say, 30 and 40 minutes. So just being realistic, it can take a little bit of time to fill it out, but it shouldn't take any more than an hour at the most. Christy, can you go to the next slide? This is the big gating question that I ask, and notice it's a multi-select checkbox, so you can choose more. We provide AI and machine learning products and solutions, and we're trying to be pretty clear. Our product is something that can be used, perhaps with some end user configuration, to solve a particular problem. And this would also include value-added resellers, for example, who are packaging up other products. And the thing, again, when we're looking at for products, they generally have a wide applicability within an industry. So one example might be a product that is for robotic process automation, for example. This is a product that would enable an end user to create kind of a workflow to maybe address some of the routine, mundane parts of a process or procedure. That's a product. They can make some configuration options or set some of those options, and then it can be deployed within their space. Second option, we provide AI and machine learning services integrations. And again, these are the companies who might look at, go to an agency and say, okay, well, you've described your problem at a high level as this. We've analyzed the situation. We think that this set of products or combined together might approach or might address your problem directly in the best way. So again, mainly off the shelf, could be some bespoke software, typically in helping to wire things together. And then the third choice, as I mentioned, more of the platforms or tools. A number of the cloud providers have natural language or image recognition, for example, as a managed service. This isn't something that you would use necessarily by itself, but you would combine with some other tools or other parts of your process. And so again, their goal is to provide these underlying capabilities that then get wired together to provide higher level services. So based upon your choices here, you'll go down one of those paths. So, oops, can we move forward?
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead and move forward one more. And then there's one additional question, and this is the one product or many. This wording may seem a little odd. We were really just trying to get a sense of, are you a company that provides multiple products? These numbers are somewhat arbitrary, looking at, are you in multiple verticals? Do you have, a certain revenue in each of those verticals greater than a certain number? This is really just meant to determine if you've got a couple of big products or just kind of one big product. And again, when I say product, I also mean, a product family. We don't need to, you don't need to fill out the survey for each single product you have. If you've got a family of, say, natural language processing products that all kind of go together as a set or a grouping or an offering, that's fine. Consider that kind of one product. This was really looking at companies that are, have a product, for example, that has a real big presence in, say, the insurance industry and the healthcare industry and, say, financial services. And that is just of a different scale than a single product that might be used for, optical character recognition of scanned PDFs, for example. Again, a little arbitrary, and we hope to give people enough flexibility to see their situation in our survey and answer questions the way they would like to. And again, this is a learning exercise for us, not only from learning about AI and machine learning, but also about learning the types of questions and how we should ask these questions going forward in the future. Christy, can you move one forward? So the common questions, I've hit on some of these. These are some of the common questions that everybody or every vendor will get asked. What areas of AI and machine learning are you addressing? What focus areas, what industries are you kind of predominant in right now? Do you use open source or not? What is your acquisition model? Is it as a service? Is this something we install on government-owned equipment? Is it something we can access, that's hosted by you? What are the licensing? Is it per usage, per seat, those kinds of things? How's it installed? What cloud providers and capabilities does it use? Are there prerequisites? Do we need to have a special relational database, for example? What kinds of training and documentation are available? If you're able to tell us reference accounts, we're very interested in hearing those. Again, I mentioned earlier about ethics policy, industry recognition. One of the other questions we ask all the vendors too is do you have any academic partnerships? Just, again, trying to get an idea of what's out there, who's out there, what you're doing, and how it's being done. And the one last question that I added is literally, it says, anything else? Is there anything else we should know? And this is two-part. One is we really want to know what your capabilities are, what your opportunities are that you would provide to the federal government. But we also want you to help us improve future surveys. So if there's something that we're way off the mark on for whatever reason, let us know about that too. Christy, you want to move ahead?
Yep. All right. I think that was
it. So I apologize if I went too quickly. I guess we're about half past the hour.
No, you did great.
So I'm not able to, I haven't been looking at the chat, so I don't know what's been coming in.
Okay. Again, thank you, Stephen. That was great. We'll start addressing the questions now. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and then we'll start going through those. I wanted to leave this page up so that if you guys have any questions afterwards, there is the email address at rfi@research.gsa.gov. That is where IMRAS emails can go to, or you can send them in and we can always forward them to Stephen as needed. And then again, sign up for any of the future IMRAS industry training events that we'll have. Sandra, do you want to go through the Q&A session, see what we have?
Absolutely, sure would. Just give me a moment to get back there. And so What I'm going to address first, just to make certain, there are a couple of people that asked questions, and I responded to them on those questions, but I think some of them are pertinent and may be a good idea. This first question comes from Christopher Norris, and his question is, our company has IA and ML machine learning throughout units, and the RFIs have been distributed to multiple PLCs. To gather all our data, we sent the PDF provided by GSA of all the questions, but there has been limitations in the multi-selection questions. Has GSA thought of a different way to provide this document or documents in the future? And so what they're talking about is the limitation on the questions. Usually within the survey program, we either set a limitation, but you always have an option in a capability file upload to do a Word document or however way you were going to do that, and then convert that document to a PDF and upload whatever information you have. It doesn't matter if it's 5 pages, 2 pages, 10 pages, 15 pages. Christy, do you have anything to add with that?
No, I think you covered it very well, Sandra. Yeah, definitely use the capabilities section to upload your documents. There is no limit on how many pages it can be.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say one other thing about the limitations. I tried when in making the survey to not have any actual limits on the number of selections that you can make. But we have hit a number of little things that we didn't really understand quite about the tool, the underlying tool that's used for the surveys. And so certainly as this is good information for me as we think about kind of what a next version of this would look like. That's certainly something that we'll keep in mind.
Great.
Okay, the next question comes from Mr. Huff, and he says, GSA aware that Chrome browser does not offer a PDF of the questions found on other browsers such as Microsoft Edge. I was not aware of that.
I wasn't either.
Okay, so we will annotate this question and
Yes.
look to it further. The other question related to, they see a lot of RFIs, but for the AI ML survey, the question is, has consideration been given to dividing the areas based on area of use, like AI for acquisition, AI for maintenance, health-related AI solutions? So it's a question about how we organize the survey. And I think, Stephen, you might be in the best position to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. The topic, I will say, did come up. I think in this first survey that we were doing, we really wanted to try to get a sense of the lay of the land, so to speak. But I think that as we get a better sense of the capabilities that are out there, and that's why I said earlier, in the future, there may not be a single, survey follow-on, right? There may be a survey which is, targeted to, for example, the acquisition process or something of that nature. That might be a great idea as far as a way to not have a survey that gets kind of out of control because of all of the topic areas it's trying to handle, and really try to focus in on more of a particular issue. So it is something we thought about. We didn't do it in this case, but I've noted it again for future reference. Thank you.
Okay, another question, well, there are several questions about the character limit and text box. As a general rule, we don't really put any limitations on the number of characters for a particular text box unless a customer specifies it. If the customer does specify the number of characters that they want to see, what we usually, inside the question, you will see in parentheses, maximum character through 2,000, 1,000, etc. So as a general rule, we don't do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't put any limits in, at least knowingly, in the text boxes. The visual text box is the medium size for the underlying tool, but you should be limited only by your browser's text input box size, which is very high these days. Tens of thousands of characters, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, another question that's a general question for everyone is, if I start the survey and stop the survey, can I continue my progress going back into it? And the answer is usually yes. You don't have to sit down in one whole setting and complete it.
Yeah, it is using a browser-based cookie to remember who you are and where you left off. And so you need to go back to it from the same browser that you started it at. But that will work. The saving is done automatically. There's no save button or anything. It gets saved as you proceed through the survey, but you do have to use the same browser.
Okay, this next individual who wants to remain anonymous has two questions. They're asking specifically, I believe, to your survey, Steve, that the question requiring a link, what can they do if they have information to provide that's not on their website? They're asking if they can attach the information and note that in the URL box. And so that's the first question. And so usually your go-to to add any information that you couldn't fit anywhere else is usually in the capability file, where you are unlimited usually in the type of information you can add. Usually in the link, in the question that requires a link, Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have set it up so that it requires a link.
Yes, it requires a URL there.
Okay, and then the next question is in the anything else, and I believe you answered that question earlier, Steve. They were asking, are you looking for a short answer? You're looking for a long answer? What are you looking for? And I believe your response was the first thing you want them to, first of all, demonstrate their capabilities and how it can benefit the government. And then the other thing that you want in that question is if the government is off in how it's thinking or presenting information, you want the vendors to share their expertise and let us know that maybe you should think about it this way or consider XYZ.
Yeah.
So anything really means anything that you think is germane that will help the government be able to deliver this service and the associated products to our customers in the way that meet their expectation, but better yet, exceed their expectation.
Yeah, I would agree.
Steve?
Yeah, and I would actually say it's more the latter. It's more the what else should we know? I hope we've done a fairly decent job with the rest of the survey finding out what your capabilities are. But yeah, this is more of a is there anything else you want to tell us? But also, how could we present, or ask for this kind of data better in the future?
Okay, so now I'm going to go to, since we started these were the questions that I caught myself answering, but I thought would be of benefit to everybody. Now we're going to go, we have about 30 questions that we need to get through. So the first question that's open, is there a current campaign to steer acquisition folks to schedule vehicles for purchases? And then there's some dialogue that some customers don't even know, for example, about the long-term lodging via GSA schedule. The GSA CSDs, along with the campaigns that we do throughout the organization at an enterprise level, do try to, number one, help our customers get their spend under management using existing government programs. But as GSA, we also we do have campaigns that go on throughout the year that's designed to educate our customers on what they can use GSA schedule contracts for. So the answer is yes, yes, and yes. There's a question about the PDF asked for Excel spreadsheet, but it was not found on the form. Is there a request from GSA for an Excel spreadsheet with answers to specific questions? So in your survey, Steve, did you request an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, you won't see that unless you are in one of the places where we thought there might be multiple answers, and it would be easier for you to upload a spreadsheet of multiple answers rather than do the survey multiple times. So really, the only place I think we ask for that is if you say that I'm a product provider and I have lots of different products. We didn't want to make people go through the survey multiple times. For lots of reasons. It's a burden on you. It's a burden on us to try to decipher that all at the end as well. And that's the place where we allow for an upload of a spreadsheet. But depending on your answers to some questions, you may not actually see that as an option.
Okay, the next question is about where to upload the white papers. Traditionally, within a survey that is sent out, GSA only allows like one upload. So my recommendation for your white paper upload is to include, just make one big PDF. You can separate it and say white paper, but just make one big PDF and then just upload it in the only place where you can actually upload documents. There's a question, are there any opportunities for vendors in relation to AI/ML with GSA? I think the survey that's, Stephen, you might want to answer that question. I think that's the purpose of the survey that you submitted.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. So GSA is both a service provider, right? We provide services to our agency partners, helping them acquire the technologies that they need. But GSA itself is also an acquirer, right? We also have needs of our own. So our intent with this surveys is initially to help our acquisition professionals working with our industry partners, but that's not in the not to the exclusion of helping, of acquiring things ourselves, for ourselves or for GSA's own purposes. That and in fact, they're just as a couple of examples off the top of my head, right? Professional building services, you can imagine all kinds of Internet of Things, right? Or fleet management, right? You can imagine all kinds of machine learning applications based upon fleet stuff for vehicles. That being said, I'll just emphasize again that there is no particular acquisition that this RFI is associated with. But so, we're looking for across all government, including GSA.
Okay, the question is, if you are a service provider and do not have products, how do you answer the product-based questions?
If you answer no, like if you only answer I'm a service provider, you won't see the other questions. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, but depending on your answers to that one big question that I showed, you may or may not see the product questions. If you see the product questions and you're really not a product provider, you can just, So in this flow chart here, for example, based upon the question that you answer, are you a service provider? Are you a product, producer, et cetera? You'll go down one of these branches. And so if you are a service provider, an integrator, you won't see the product questions.
Okay, the next question, and Christy, I don't know, you might have a general answer for this. Okay. What information is provided back to industry and how is it shared? Seems like a lot of this information could be collected and continuously refined as an online database.
Well, currently, and I think, Stephen, you can correct me, I think once you respond to the survey, you are provided some additional information to a point of contact that is usually provided like 7 to 10 days after you responded to the actual RFI. Did you have yours set up like that, Steve?
I'm sure that we did, but I will answer the second half of that question. I don't. Okay. But Christy, did I answer your question, or was there more you wanted to say there?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
To the person who asked that question, you've read our mind, right? I mean, one of the concerns that we have, being in a position to supply this kind of information, and it's not just AI and machine learning; it could be any area of acquisition. Is keeping it fresh, is keeping it up to date, is making it readily accessible to the acquisition professionals and agency partners that we work with. We do have a thought, and it's only a thought at this point, about creating a data repository, working more closely with industry to get that repository filled in some manner using APIs or something of that nature. Kind of getting rid of the survey as a kind of a middleman. That's a longer term goal, but it is a great suggestion and something that we are very, very interested in.
Okay, there's a question that says, under the question, what does your product do? Where would R&D type companies fit in? And then another question associated with that is, how would an R&D company respond?
R&D company, so there's two answers to that question. One is that if something is still like, if a product is kind of still new, it's in a beta test phase, that kind of thing, it's not generally available, there are questions to that effect. So you could take something, an idea that's even just half baked or still being baked, and list it as a product, but say, hey, it's not generally available yet. And there are some questions that ask that. I think, though, that what I'm hearing, the other part of that, the other way to interpret that question, though, is by saying an R&D company. I'm hearing a company that potentially does more of a bespoke software solution for a customer. And that might be a little bit more on the researchy side, right? It's not a standard, I'll take an A and a B off the shelf and combine them for a customer. It may be we have to invent something in order to then allow the customer to use it. I would still classify those sorts of vendors as kind of the systems integrator type, because even though they're inventing software, they're kind of working on custom bespoke solutions for an agency partner. And so again, these lines are fuzzy, but if I'm interpreting your question correctly, I would say R&D company. I would kind of lump into a systems integrator company with bespoke software, and that's something you can certainly make clear in the survey responses. If it's, hey, we have a suite of products, but we've got a couple of things that are still being developed, that would be kind of more in the product side of this diagram.
Okay, so the next question, really, Christy, deals with the functioning on how we set up the IMARCS survey in general.
Okay.
Saying that if for the basic information of an organization, is there a way to save the information across all surveys so they don't have to enter their same information? So I guess they're just saying, like, if I respond to several of these IMARCS, if I put name or whatever in there in the name of my company and I put it in the same way, is there a way for it to populate it and recognize me across all IMARCS? And the answer is no.
Not yet. Not yet. You're right. Not yet. We are in the process of trying to gather that type of information so that if you have responded to several of our IMARCS RFIs, that when you go back in, it will auto-populate your company's information, your socio, that general information, so you don't have to keep entering it. Sadly, right now, it's just not available yet, but that is one of our goals to have IMARCS do for our industry partners as well.
Okay, the next question is RFI only used for pre-RFP process. How are you using this information, Stephen?
Yeah, so again, not intended to have any particular RFP. This is really meant as a trying to define the landscape in a way that will help our acquisition professionals in GSA better serve their partners. And given how new AI, and it's interesting, if you look at GSA's CIC, Cloud Information Center, that service system was developed for exactly the same reason, was to help our acquisition professionals get a better handle on what was meant by cloud, on what cloud was, what it means, what capabilities are there, how it's sold, how it's used. And that was intended to help GSA's acquisition professionals better handle questions from the people seeking to purchase cloud services. In a very similar way, this RFI is to help define the landscape of AI and machine learning. Again, our acquisition professionals are professionals in acquisition. They're not necessarily AI and machine learning researchers. And so to the extent that we can help them understand that landscape and to provide them with the general information that they need to be able to better respond when our agency partners say, hey, I'd really like to get into robotic process automation or optical character recognition of this stack of PDFs that I have. What can we do that we, GSA, are in a better position to answer those questions for them?
Okay, so we got quite a bit of questions left, and we're at a crossroads. So if we can make our answers a little bit more succinct and enable the vendors who questions that we have to be able to figure out a way to follow up. So in general, someone has asked, and I don't know the answer to this, or I would text it so everybody can see it. Will this and all the questions be available, the whole transcript be available after this call? And what's the time period that they'll be able to have the recording?
I can address that. And then we're going to have to unfortunately end. It's about 10 till, and we're running out of time. But yes, so after we wrap here in just a moment, I will email everyone a few different things. The presentation you just saw, along with the kind of the promo slideshow that we did at the beginning. The actual video recording will be made available as soon as possible. We'll try to push this one through because I know there's some deadlines in here. That will be on GSA's YouTube channel. And then as far as the transcript of the questions, typically we do not share the entirety of those. A couple different reasons why, but just know that we don't generally just share those raw transcripts of questions. However, Christy, if it's fine with you, I'd like to share an email address in the chat that people can use.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So rfi@research.gsa.gov. And Christy, that goes to your team,
Yes.
if I understand correctly. And that's the best email address. If you have something specific related to an RFI or IMARCS, I think that's the best email to use.
Yeah, and then if anything comes in that is for Stephen, then we can get it over to Stephen and he will respond from there. So yeah, definitely use that email address to send them in, and then we'll disperse them out as needed.
Okay.
I was trying to copy some of the questions that people had so that maybe between Stephen and Christy and our team, we can answer it and get it sent out to everybody, but it doesn't appear like I'm going to be fast enough. So.
Oh no, I'll get those to you. We capture all those questions.
Okay.
We just typically don't share them with the mass audience. So no, I'll provide all that to you guys afterwards. No problem whatsoever. But with that being said, that is the end of our time today. So unfortunately, we have to cut it short. I apologize if we didn't get to your questions. There were a ton of really great questions.
Yeah.
But I want to take a moment specifically to thank Steve for being here. Your expertise is obvious. Really appreciate it. And Christy, of course, thank you so much for everything. And Sandra, you did a fantastic job with the questions. But that is it for today. Thank you again. Can't wait to see you next month. That concludes today's webinar. Have a great day. Stay safe and be kind to one another. Goodbye.